And so Enoch has a lot to say about the watchers. In fact, he says that it was them that actually caused the flood to have to happen. And he says that they taught men secret things. And that's why they were judged on the earth with the flood. But he also connects the name watcher with angel. Now here is where the whole UFO phenomenon comes in, and the whole idea of what might be taking place with the manifestations in the heaven. Enoch actually defines two different sets. He talks about spirits that were born on the earth. And there's some variations in demonology of where demons come from. One is the idea that they were created as a kind of a lower form of a spirit, sort of evil, on the earth. They don't have bodies. The other side of the argument is that they were actually the spirits that indwelt these giants that were created by the watchers themselves. And when their bodies were destroyed in the flood, they had no more bodies left, and they had to just fend for themselves. They can manifest in objects and other beings, but they don't have any bodies of their own. And the watchers are a different and distinct group. They're the spirits of heaven who were promiscuous with women. They assume many forms. They lead men astray so that they sacrifice to demons as gods until the time of the great judgment, the time of their consummation of sin. There's going to be an end point to what they're doing. Ephesians in the New Testament actually explains more into this too. Paul's talking about the Christian's walk in life, and he says, before you were saved, you walked according to the course of this world, the prince of the powers of the air, the spirit that works in the sons of disobedience. Ephesians 6, he again gets into this idea that they're spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. In the Greek, atmospheros, they live up in the air, these beings. And according to what Enoch is saying, if they were demons, we wouldn't see them. So the only alternative then, of course, from the paradigm of Enoch is that they're watchers, and they're taking on whatever form they want. But they're not going to be able to do this forever. Apparently, they're going to be cast down. And as Enoch connected the name angel to watcher, we look at the future of the ones who rebelled, the watchers or the angels that rebelled, and there's going to be a point when they're thrust down to the earth. And it connects the name for dragon, which is another word for watcher in Greek. It talks about how they're not found in heaven anymore. There's no place for them in heaven any longer, which means that they're coming to earth. Isaiah even talks about that same sort of scenario when he talks about the day of the Lord. He'll punish the fallen angels, and they're rounded up and put in a prison, and then they're tried and condemned. I think that Isaiah and Revelation 12 are connected with this idea that the angels that rebelled are thrust down to the earth. And you look at the actual motif of 33 that's found in, geometrically, a third of anything. And every time it's listed in the New Testament here on Revelation and in the Old Testament, I found it in Zechariah, it's always connected to this judgment. One after another, everything's burned up, sea becomes blood, everything that lived in it dies, on and on and on. So, with the idea that 33 has a connection to a point in time, 2012, it connects us to where it all happened here, the point of contention in Jerusalem, with this number, 33, with the symbology that's repeated redundantly over and over again that means more than one thing, but especially points to a point in the future where some force in heaven is going to intersect with the earth again. And take a look at Jerusalem. Things actually are measured in the relationship to Jerusalem. The three major players in ownership over Jerusalem after its fall by the Romans. First, it would be Islam, which was founded in 630 AD. And Istanbul and the Turks were the last Islamic nation to actually rule Jerusalem. In nautical miles, they are within 630 nautical miles of 632. That's amazing because the armies of Muhammad actually took over Palestine in 632. Napoleon very briefly invaded Palestine, and he actually wrote out a letter that was declaring Palestine a new home for the Jews. And, of course, it only lasted for a year, but that was in 1799, the same amount of nautical miles between Jerusalem and Paris. And, of course, Israel became a nation, a sovereign nation in 1948, but before that, of course, it was ruled by the British. So if you go from Jerusalem to London, that's 1,948 nautical miles. It all goes back to the first point of contention, the first connection between heaven and earth with a being from heaven and a human. The names are even mentioned over and over again. We have Cydonia on Mars. You have Cydonia as the actual fruit of the tree of knowledge. You have the serpent on the pole. You have the rose on the cross, this idea of a head that's in charge somehow. The proto-evangelicon, the very first good news that was given to men was in Genesis, and it said that the woman would crush the head of the serpent, or the offspring of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, while the serpent would strike the heel of the offspring of the woman. Well, in the illuminated paradigm, you have this serpent in name, in the symbolic name, ruling men, giving them more knowledge, bringing them closer to what it seems like the goal was here, but was interrupted by God. It's all about becoming immortal. It's all about moving into the plane of immortality for human beings. But that's been covered. The tree of life actually exists. We actually can go to the tree of life right now. So I think it's a pretty interesting idea because, as I said, the tree of life is guarded by cherubim and swords. But the Messiah actually has created a way for us to gain access to it. Now, I looked at the name for Jerusalem, and I found that it equals the same as Leviathan. In the modern actual writing of Jerusalem, they have another yod here, but the ancient writing is this way. It actually equals the same strange connection of circles and days as Leviathan. And I think that there's an analogy here. You'll actually see that Leviathan crosses in this configuration of how the ecliptic with the symbols and the actual tribes of Israel are arranged around this temple or tabernacle. Leviathan goes right through the center of it. And the tabernacle, of course, and the temple exist only in Jerusalem. And you have the man over here and the lion over here, so you have the first advent and the second advent, and you have the actual symbols that connect this to time and space on our earth. It's all about playing out this understanding of what God's doing here on earth spiritually through men. That's the point of contention. We're becoming immortal through what Christ has done, but we're demonstrating this to the myriads of beings that exist out in heaven. They're watching us. That's why they're called watchers. Through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might be made known to the principalities and powers in heavenly places, according to the eternal purpose which he purposed in Messiah, Jesus our Lord, which is what a Christian actually inherits when he unwittingly, I think, moves into becoming an immortal being by accepting what Christ did on the cross. It's a huge thing. And I think the generation's going to see some of the most dynamic changes in the church since the actual first advent. Thanks very much. We got time? Okay. I shouldn't dress so warmly.